So today's masterclass is just an hour, so it's going to be a pretty short and snappy masterclass based on how you can enhance longevity. Because previously we looked at all of the pillars that you need to put in place for health. If you haven't seen that masterclass, go back and watch it. That one was much longer, and it was all based around how you can put in place, I feel like this is glitching a little bit, the necessary pillars to really optimize your health. And you want to have all of those foundations in place first before you start kind of layering in the things that I'm going to be talking about today, although they very much do complement each other. So what I'm going to do is share some slides. There's been some kind of groundbreaking research recently on enhancing longevity and really what causes aging, which is quite exciting. Some of this you'll be familiar with because it is proving, again, the same principles that we've known about previously, like things like sirtuin activators that enhance longevity and metabolic flexibility, but there are also new things as well. So what I'm going to do is share my slides with you so that you can see. Hold on a second. Right, here we go. So here we go. Let's play this from the start. So this is really about reducing biological age. Hopefully you can still see me because I've now lost control of the chat, which is slightly annoying. But hopefully you can still hear this all okay. So what you're going to learn really is how aging is correlated with disease. So there is the harsh reality that as we get older, we do have a higher risk of developing many of the chronic diseases that we're seeing. So things like heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, the risks do increase with age. But if we can understand what's accelerating that aging process and how we can start using certain strategies to lower our biological age, seemingly then, and what the research is lining up to show, is that we are then also lowering our risk of developing these diseases and also developing the ability to actually lower our biological age so that we can truly have that longevity. And by longevity, what I mean here is not just living longer, because I don't think anyone wants to live longer in poor health, but really in optimal health. And what I would say is the overarching principle from looking at people who have really good health well into their 80s, 90s and beyond, and when we look at the blue zones, is they do follow certain practices, they live a very natural lifestyle, they balance good forms of stress with relaxation practices and recovery. But I think you can pretty much walk your way to 100. So doing gentle exercise on a regular basis or moderate exercise is a really key pillar, and utilizing your brain and body. If you don't use it, you literally lose it. And so it's going to be a combination, which I'm not covering so much in today's presentation. We're looking really at things that you can do lifestyle-wise, nutritional-wise, sleep-wise, that will really help to put these practices in place. But what I would say to you is this concept of retirement that everyone dreams of and really not doing anything with our brains, I believe from everything I see is a risky strategy. So you definitely want to be utilizing your brain as much as you possibly can. And you guys are doing that because even coming to masterclasses like this means that you're constantly using and developing and learning new things. And I would encourage you to keep doing that. So the reality is, unfortunately, that 80% of adults over 65 years old have one chronic disease. The scary thing is that certainly in places like the US, 77% of them have at least two. And this is because when you develop one, you're more likely to go on to develop another one, because it's the same things that are causing these diseases. So the same things that cause heart disease also cause diabetes, also can cause cancer. Dr. Mark Hyman came out this week. He was talking about how 70% of cancers are caused by nutrition. 70% of cancers are caused by nutrition. Now that can sound scary. It can also be something that we have an enormous amount of control over in terms of the choices that we're making. And we're making those choices, anywhere between 2 and 5 times a day, depending on how many times you eat. So really important to make the best choices you can, eating the best food available that you can. But I'm going to show you some nutrients that if you can get these into your diet, they're going to really help to reverse aging. 1/3 of everyone in America has, under the age of 65, has a metabolic syndrome. Now, metabolic syndrome, you probably heard a lot about, a lot of people talking about it. It's really a collection of symptoms. So it includes things like visceral fat around the middle, and more of an apple shape, higher blood sugar, less insulin sensitivity, higher blood pressure often, and things like high cholesterol or higher triglycerides. And if people develop that, this is a big warning sign. So if you're developing these type of symptoms, maybe you've got one of these, so now you've got high blood pressure, maybe your blood sugar doesn't look as well controlled, maybe your cholesterol is beginning to keep up, maybe you're getting more belly fat coming around your tummy. Encourage you to address these as quickly as you can, because the sooner you bring those back into balance, the less risk you have of going on to develop metabolic syndrome, and then in turn going on to develop these chronic diseases, because really that is the foundation that starts to pave the way for these other problems that we're seeing. So accelerated aging does increase your risk. Okay, so your biological age is the single biggest risk factor for all the major diseases, including things like diabetes, cancer, and dementia. Now, when I say your bio age, what we mean here is you have your chronological age, which is the age that you are according to your date and year of birth. But then we also have our biological age, and that's where we really can be younger than our years in as short as 8 weeks, seemingly, based on the current research. Again, as I say, 70% of all cancers are caused by nutrition, so we really want to take this on board and choose the best food that we can. The thread that connects all of these things, that connects your diet and lifestyle habits, your biological age, and your risk of disease is epigenetics. So we understand, and those of you that have done my longevity blueprint, Live Younger, will have looked at your DNA. And as you know, in that program, what I teach all the time is that your DNA tells us where to look. It tells us where you might need support and where we can tweak things, but really it's the epigenetic expression that is the most key part here. And this is controlled by a process known as methylation. Now, you will have seen, if you have your DNA results, you will have seen that your DNA, your methylation SNPs may be a little bit impaired at baseline, so you may have a higher need for certain B vitamins, which we're going to look into today. And that will tell you to encourage you to eat more folate, consume foods that are higher in B12, and other supportive nutrients that help that methylation process. B6 is another one. But regardless of whether you have those SNPs and whether you've done another test, maybe you've done a test with another provider, what you do want to do is to enhance methylation in the right way in the body, because this is basically turning genes on and turning them off. And what we want at any one time is to be turning the right ones on and turning the right ones off at the right times. And your body is masterful in this process, provided you give it the right nutrients. It can go a bit wonky with age, and you might need a bit more support. However, for the most part, if you're eating the right things and you're managing your stress and you're sleeping well and you're moving, all of the things that I talk about in that shift protocol, you're going to be going a long way to supporting this process. So essentially, it tells your genes what to do. So it places what are called methyl groups on top of your genetic material. Now, you get basically tagging of your genetics, and these genetic tags can be passed down through generation. So what we see is they get passed down by 2 generations in general. So what your grandmother did may be now affecting your health, certainly what your mother did. And so anyone that's listening to this presentation who hasn't yet had children, what a wonderful position to be in, because you can really get yourself into the healthiest state possible and really pass that health on to future generations. But essentially, whatever we've been given. For ourselves, it doesn't really matter. We want to work out how can we optimize for this. Now, this is basically 1 carbon atom and 3 hydrogen atoms. It's extremely stable when you start having methyl groups attached, and it is as essential as breathing. It literally happens billions of times a day in all of the cells in your body. It produces your DNA, it repairs your DNA, and it controls that epigenetic expression, which is so, so important. Now, as I say, we're going to either turn off or turn on, or just turn the volume down. And sometimes we do need to be turning the volume down. When those methyl groups are taken off, it turns the gene on. So now the gene can be fully activated and transcribed. So the helix uncurls, sends out messages, proteins and enzymes, and things are made. When these methyl groups are added, it silences that gene, or at least turns the volume down dramatically. Now, as I say, aging does slow down methylation and it imbalances it. So having the right nutrients available becomes more and more important with age. So these are the levers that affect it. This is taken from a fantastic book called Younger You by Dr. Cara Fitzgerald. She has recently done a study where she's managed to reverse people's biological age by 8 weeks. By 3.23 years in as short a period as 8 weeks. So far only done on men because it was a difficult study to implement initially when you're just testing it with women as well, because women they were taking people from sort of 50-ish right through to their 70s and working in that category. They were healthy individuals for the most part. And what they were doing is seeing, when we introduce different things to them, how can we make them even healthier? Can we reverse their biological age? And so difficult thing to do with women, because at that age, some women will be still in perimenopause. Some women will be making that transition into menopause and be in the middle of it. Some women will be post-menopause, depending on where they are. So it would have been much more difficult to control. So initially tested with men, extremely positive results insofar as 8 weeks only to reverse biological age by 3.23 years. And now that is being done on women. And the interesting thing is there were no kind of no real crazy supplements or like extreme biohacking or CRISPR gene technology or anything like that done. They were simple diet and lifestyle practices that upgraded their health and reduced their biological age. So you can, I'd highly recommend that book. We don't have time to go through everything that they did today, but I will be talking about the main key principles. But these are the positive influences that you'll see on the left-hand side of this slide. And then on the right, we have the negative influences. So relaxation is key. Cuddling is key. Cuddling releases oxytocin, hugely cardiovascularly protective. We learned about that on the last masterclass. Very, very good for your health. So whether you live alone or you live with somebody, maybe you have a pet, the more you can reach out, the more social you can be, particularly in times of stress. Stress makes us social. The more this is going to release more oxytocin and also protect you. And just having that time to wind down and relax. This is why we see that people who have dogs, for example, that seems to be positively correlated with longevity. I think partly because also they're getting you outside into fresh air, into the light, you're walking them and you're having this lovely relaxation with them as well. Meditation, very, very important. In fact, in Dr. Cara's study, they had the individuals meditating twice a day for 20 minutes. If you've listened to my podcast with Emily Fletcher, all around Ziva meditation, she very much talks about 20 minutes twice a day. Now, for a busy, mum who's working like me, that can seem very difficult to fit in. I have a sort of a non-negotiable where I'll meditate at least once a day. And if I'm very, very caught, and can't, for whatever reason, I'm traveling or there are other extraneous circumstances, I will practice some breath work. So I never leave a day that goes by where I don't focus on one of these things. Gratitude, journaling. We need to really hone this relaxation. One thing that I found with meditation, very interesting, is that it's like a muscle. The more that you use it, the more you will enhance that very directed mental function. It is really genuinely, like they say in the Headspace app, like taking your mind to the gym. I think it's a very necessary, important part of longevity strategy. Sleep is really key. Obviously, we talked a lot about sleep. I've taught a lot about sleep. You can go back and watch the other masterclass on how to optimize that. Just the right foods and just the right exercise are really key. So getting enough of these nutrients that we're going to go through into your diet to support all this process and provide the nutrient donors is really, really key. And also getting just enough exercise, so not exercising too much is very key as well. And then optimizing the health of your microbiome. If you have a healthy microbiome and good gut bacteria, they will help you to produce more folate. If you have which is a natural methylation donor. So rather than taking constantly very high levels of B vitamins, we may take those for a short time to correct something like higher homocysteine or support it if energy levels are low, and those various processes. I always say to clients, you want to then drop down to a couple of times a week, really, on anything you're taking extraneously and or exogenously, and try to incorporate more of these foods into your diet. And if you have good gut bacteria, it seems that actually you can produce more folate naturally. The P3OM by Bioptimizers actually contains this form of probiotic that can help you to produce more folate. The negative influences are things like toxins, if we're exposed to too many toxins. So minimizing our exposure to toxins is really, really key, but also engaging in practices that actively detoxify the body, like sauna, sweating, encouraging the move of the lymph to lymphatic flow through things like massage, rebounding, so jumping on a trampoline, very, very key as well. Also making sure you've got a good elimination pathways, which comes back to this good gut health to make sure that we're getting rid of toxins so they're not building up in the body. Too much exercise has been adversely correlated with longevity, so we don't want to be overdoing it. Generally, what the study shows, if you're doing lots and lots of endurance exercise, it can actually start to cause potentially cardiovascular problems. So this is where we're going over 60 to 90 minutes per exercise session. It's not actually necessary to do that, and that is good news for a lot of people, because understanding that you don't have to spend a long time, you don't have to have masses of time to do this, is really helpful. I like to stack my hacks. You've probably seen me post about this on social media multiple times, but I will always put things together. So for example, when I go out for a walk with my dogs, I will be listening to an audio podcast or listening to a book or a course or something that I'm trying to learn, because and sometimes I will do breathing exercises. For example, on a day that I haven't had time to meditate, I may combine walking breathwork exercises and just focusing and having a more meditative walk in nature, so that I'm kind of double stacking these things to save me time, because I'm busy and I want to maximize my time, because I believe that time is the greatest asset that we have. It's the one thing we can never ever get back. We can't just earn more time. So we want to be really intentional. I think that's a really big part of conscious living, which again goes a bit beyond the scope of this presentation, but you can stack those hacks together. If I've had time to meditate, I've done other relaxation practices, likelihood is I'm going to be listening to something that's educating me. So now I'm using my mind and body at the same time, which is what we're talking about, use it or lose it. So it's a really good way of doing it. Certain medications can be detrimental. Other medications seem to be positively correlated with longevity. I'm not going into medications today, but things like metformin, rapamycin, things like this have shown very positive results. However, we then see other things like berberine, for example, being potentially better. But the research is emerging all the time than things like metformin for helping with longevity and controlling blood sugar. Excess stress seems to be very bad. Again, this comes down to your perception of stress, and we went through that on the other webinar, looking at the way you perceive it. If you see the stress as positive, it's something you're enjoying, it's bringing you on, right? It's developing more resilience or more mastery in a field. Stressing yourself a little bit is not a bad thing. That's the very basis of intermittent fasting, cold showering, all of the things that we do, giving ourselves challenges. But if it's excess stress where it becomes a problem, that can be a negative influence on methylation. High blood sugar very definitely is. I would encourage you to monitor your blood sugar. Start using things that enable you to understand when your body is burning fat, when it's burning high sugar. Use whole foods that have plenty of fiber coupled with healthy fats and proteins to moderate that blood sugar response. You can also use things like this. So for example, I've spoken about this Lumen device that you breathe into and breathe out to understand how metabolically flexible you are. Are you transitioning back into fat burning quite quickly? It's something I use. You can wear a continuous blood glucose monitor. Again, I do that intermittently, always to keep an eye. You can test your HbA1c, which is a kind of 10-week or so measure of how sugary you've been. And then bad gut bugs also are going to be a negative influence on this methylation as well, partly because you're not going to be producing as much folate. So as I say, Dr. Cara Fitzgerald's study showed that an 8-week study of men, they were 3.23 years younger at the end of 8 weeks. Now, they also saw some other benefits. They saw a significant decrease in triglycerides. That would suggest that they've dropped their insulin and blood sugar levels as well, because if you're having a lot of blood sugar, increased blood sugar levels, your body's going to start to make more body fat and more triglycerides, which go into the blood. If you're in a more fat burning state, you've got more ketones being produced, you're going to manage this better. Often things like cholesterol, triglycerides come from not just what we're eating, but the way our body's behaving in terms of what it's producing. But if we can give it the right messaging, and food is chemical information, and we're exercising and sleeping well, see how it all comes together again. We're going to be actually giving the right message that there was also a significant drop in total cholesterol and LDL. They had improved energy and reduced anxiety. This was less measurable, but it was present. And then they also had an increase in methylfolate, which is really important because they didn't use any folate supplementation at all. In her clinical practice, by following these types of things that we're talking about, they've seen people lose weight if they're needed. This is something that I've seen in almost every single person, I would say, that's done my longevity blueprint, Live Younger. If they've needed to lose weight, they have lost weight very naturally by adopting a lower kind of anti-inflammatory diet that's high in these sirtuin enhancing compounds, fiber and vegetables and vitamins and minerals, that increases exercise, and that uses things like meditation and stress reduction practices like breath work. Everyone inevitably loses weight. So people often approach things, I've got weight to lose, I need to go on a diet. It's not about restrictive dieting. When you give your body nutrients and you become really, really healthy, that weight is naturally going to fall off. Apologies about the typo here, it should say lower inflammation. So getting the seed oils out of your diet would be the number one thing I would suggest. You need to stay away at all costs from things like rapeseed oil, corn oil, sunflower, all these oils. Just stay away from and focus on things like olive oil. Olive oil should be a huge component of anyone, or not huge, but should be a solid component of anyone's diet. It's super high in antioxidants, really, really important for health. It's actually better to cook with. A lot of people are worried about the smoke point. It turns out that olive oil has such high polyphenols and antioxidants that actually it doesn't really oxidize even when heated. Now, you don't want to burn the oil, but if you've done my programs, you'll know how much I encourage you to cook at moderate temperatures so that you're not oxidizing things. That's really important. People see resolved skin issues, less joint pain, less headaches, and improved gastrointestinal health, and also improvement in the methylation markers that we look for. So homocysteine is a test that you can get done. That if that is high, you want to get that corrected because it predisposes you to a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. B12 and folate also really important. Again, two important markers you can see from blood testing, from organic acid testing, whether you do a full organic acid test or something like the Dutch test as part of hormones, we can see what those levels are as well. Now, folate is, this is taken from her book because this has a U-shaped curve. This is the therapeutic range. You don't want to have folate that's too low. You also don't want to have folate that's too high. If you are having folate levels that are too high, this is very, very preliminary. There is nothing yet to say that it will cause cancer, but it seems that it may, if there are the presence of things like cancer, it can exacerbate it if folate goes too high. So we do need to be careful. So what we want to do is try to get as much of this as we possibly can from our food and from optimizing that microbiome. Folic acid is a synthetic form. It's being put into a lot of like fortified foods, things like bread, commonly. Not everyone assimilates it properly. Not everyone takes folic acid and turns that synthetic form into folate, which means things can get a bit stuck. Other people do process it very efficiently, and they can end up with too high levels, which is why we want to try and get it. If we're taking it in supplement form, use the methylfolate, natural forms, and you don't need to be taking it on a necessary daily basis, but you definitely want to be increasing folate in your diet from things like broccoli, cruciferous vegetables, leafy greens, things like that, and from optimizing your gut bacteria. So having probiotic-rich yogurt, having things like bone broth, enhancing gut health, having fermented foods, sauerkraut, things like that, all very, very helpful. The methyl donors that your body uses to create these methyl groups are these ones. Say potassium here as well. So you want to make sure you're getting enough minerals in your diet. You want to be getting all the essential amino acids, in fact, and your body will make amino acids, but the essential ones you want to be getting obviously from food. But you also want to make sure cysteine is often a limiting factor for producing glutathione, which is really important for longevity and liver function. Taurine, very relaxing. You can take it actually alongside magnesium to help with sleep in sort of 3 grams a day. It's very important for health, and it acts, while it's an amino acid, it acts as an antioxidant type amino acid in the body. DHA, also very, very important. I tend to take I'd say the supplements that I take on a daily basis, every single day, is magnesium and omega-3. There are others I take, but those are really, really key. Folate, B12, we want to be getting this from our diet, betaine and choline as well, Choline is really is something you can get from eggs, from egg yolks. So again, you don't want to be stripping out. Like, try and eat food in its most whole form, should I say, as nature intended it. Don't have like egg whites. You're going to be missing out on the choline, which is also really important for brain function. So folate is highest in things like liver, chickpeas, beans. In fact, in this study with Dr. Cara, they were eating liver a few times a week. You want to include other foods that are rich. So these are the other methyl donors. So betaine you can get from things like beetroot and spinach and quinoa. Quinoa is a good grain. It's higher in protein, which is helpful. So you're going to get less of a blood sugar spike. Choline is from egg yolks, again, liver. You can see that liver is a bit of an all-round amazing food, really, in terms of nutrient density. EGCG, very important. This is a sirtuin enhancing compound as well, which we'll come on to in a moment. You can get that in green tea or matcha. Very important. Curcumin as well, another sirtuin enhancer. So is quercetin. What was interesting is romaric acid from rosemary, highly correlated with longevity as well. So just adding rosemary. Rosemary is something, I was having it last night with some steak. Like, it's so nice when you just roast some rosemary and garlic with food. Just get it in as much as you can. I sneak it into my kids' bolognese as well. And they go, what are these bits, when they're like pulling out the long bits? And I'm like, it's the rosemary, it doesn't matter, darling, just eat it, it's good for you. So you can get, trying to get as many of these sources of foods in as you possibly can is going to be helping to support methylation. Lifestyle practices, interestingly, on this study, actually, they only slept for around 7 hours. So more sleep isn't necessarily better. Standard sleep requirement is 7 to 8 hours a night. If you've done a DNA report with me, you'll see your sleep need. I do see in a small number, and I do mean a small number, of people that need over 9 hours. Most people tend to fall within this 7 to 9 hours. Some people are less than 7 hours, like myself. I would say you want to optimize this. I did a fascinating podcast on this that is out at the moment. It's the current podcast with Dr. Greg Potter, all about sleep and about how to optimize when you're underslept and what you can use in terms of nutrient things to help with that. But also, you can tell whether you're somebody who has a lower sleep need, because generally what will happen is that when you have been through a period of sleep deprivation, you won't rebound in the same way that someone who has a higher sleep need. We were talking on that podcast about how, and this is exactly what I noticed myself, and this is what Dr. Greg was saying, is that if you're somebody who has less of a sleep need and then you don't get enough sleep. So it happened with me recently when my father was very sick and then sadly passed away. I had a very, very little sleep. And what happened when I then had this sort of rebound effect was a rebound in deep sleep and REM sleep. REM sleep helps with emotional regulation. What I didn't see is a huge makeup of sleep where I'm now suddenly sleeping for 8-9 hours. That hasn't happened at all. My sleep stayed very much within what I normally have, which is somewhere between 6 hours and 6 hours 45 minutes. I generally will sleep around that every day. Sometimes it is a little bit less. If I go sub 5 hours and 3/4, I find it quite hard, but this is a spectrum for everyone. So I would really encourage you to understand how much your sleep need is. Have a look at your genetics. Reach out to me if you haven't done it. We can help you with that. But also, you can do things like the summer coming up where the best way is to go camping and actually see when you naturally will go to bed. Are you someone who's going to sit up by the campsite chatting into the early hours, or when the sun goes down, are you someone who wants to go to sleep? You'll start to understand where you are on this spectrum of early morning type and night owl as well. And again, Dr. Greg and I were talking about this because there are people who wake up as early as 3 a.m. and there are people who never want to go to bed until 5 a.m. So it's really interesting. It seems that as humans, we have the whole 24-hour spectrum covered, and you will fall within that somewhere. So you may be a very, very early morning type, or you may be a very much a night owl, or you could be anywhere in between of those. So really understanding your sleep, using things like Aura. Yes, they're not as accurate as a sleep lab, but really understanding that data, seeing what affects you, seeing how you can get your heart rate to come down, how you can create that hammock curve where it's coming down in the deepest part of your sleep and then it's starting to raise again as you're coming out, and cortisol's naturally beginning to raise, so you're going to get up in the morning. Looking at those rhythms, don't get hung up on them, but just helping yourself and inform yourself, really key. But it's not necessarily about sleeping more always. It's about the quality as much as anything. Exercise was really, really key. So that lowers inflammation, it improves insulin sensitivity and lowers homocysteine. Very interesting as well. When I was speaking to Dr. Greg, we were talking about when you're underslept, a lot of people will avoid exercise because they think, well, I'm really, really tired. Maybe I shouldn't be putting extra pressure on my body. Actually, no, you should be exercising. You might not go and crush like some kind of CrossFit WOD, but you can go out and walk or go and do some strength training or something gentle, go for a swim. Really, really good for you. And it actually helps again with lack of sleep. So it's really important. In Dr. Cara's study, what they did was 30 minutes 5 times weekly at about 60 to 80% of maximum perceived exertion. See, in an activity that they enjoyed. So again, it wasn't vigorous activity at all. So find something you enjoy. The exercise that you do for the purposes of longevity is slightly different to what you do if you have a goal. I would encourage you to look at both and see what is your goal. Is it a body composition goal? Because if it is, you'll need a very good structure to achieve that. Again, if you're doing a race of some sort, you've got to look at and think, well, am I doing an endurance event? Am I doing something that's faster? What do I need to train for? And work with a trainer. You can reach out to us, we can design those programs and put the right structure in place. For the purposes of longevity, go back to the masterclass that we did last time, where I talk all about the pillars that you want to get in place in terms of stimulating those slow twitch muscle fibers with endurance, the fast twitch ones, the strength training, and the overall walking. And as I say, you can walk your way pretty much, I think, to 100. Reducing stress, so breathwork, meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, binaural beats, it doesn't really matter what it is. I would encourage you to have a practice that, again, just something you enjoy. It's fit. If it's a natural fit for you, go and do it. You know, if it's 10 minutes of yoga in the morning and that's how you get your meditation, great. If you feel like you get meditation from going out for a run, fantastic. Personally, I think a dedicated meditation practice really, really helps to optimize brain function. I often get asked, how do I consume and produce quite as much content as I do and create so much content for people? And I do credit that a lot with my meditation practice because it allows me to be very laser focused. You know, you want to shine that torch very directionally rather than sort of flickering like a candle where your focus is going everywhere. And I think meditation is a fantastic way to do that, as well as obviously helping with longevity. The sirtuin enhancing compounds are really important. We talked about them there, this rosmarinic acid from resveratrol, the quercetin, really important, EGCG from green tea. There are other ones, and they basically activate these sirtuin genes, which are your longevity genes within the body. So I just want to spend a few minutes on that, just conscious time, 25 to 2, to make sure that you, for some of you, this will be a refresh, but that you're getting these in your diet. So they're switching on an ancient family of genes. Those are the sirtuins. Now, they influence your ability to burn fat and your susceptibility to disease. So they're very, very important. They also influence your longevity. So remember, when you're eating these compounds, you're triggering the exact things you want to look younger, to live younger, to have a better body composition. They respond to stressors. So when we eat sirtuin enhancing compounds, we're stressing our body. We're looking at those xenohomeostatic compounds from plants that deliberately stress our body and make us stronger and more resilient. Fasting, calorie restriction, and exercise are the other ways to do this. Cold showering, anything that's a hormetic stress, sauna, is going to do this. When you eat these foods, obviously it's a very easy way to do it. And because these foods are so tasty, it's even easier to incorporate. When you activate your sirtuins, it's going to enhance your metabolic rate. So it's a really, really key thing to do if you're looking for body composition results. It also increases the efficiency of your muscles, it switches on fat burning, it lowers inflammation, and it repairs damage to your cells. So this is definitely like a longevity lover thing to do. You've really got to master the art of getting more sirtuin enhancing compounds in your diet. So we have 7, not all animals have 7 sirtuins, but humans do. The 2 most important ones here for energy balance is SIRT1 and 3. You've got SIRT1 all the way through your body. SIRT3 is predominantly in the mitochondria. So when you are using red light therapy, you're enhancing your mitochondria. More mitochondria is going to give you more energy. Now, when they genetically engineer mice to have more SIRT1, they get leaner and they're more metabolically active. So if we can trigger more SIRT1, it seems and it's been utilized in a lot of different diet protocols, that in humans we also get these fantastic results. SIRT1 levels have been shown to be lower in obese levels, so it looks as though they have less SIRT1. Could be another reason why they are overweight. And people with high SIRT1 are leaner and they're more resistant to weight gain. And that's what you really want to be, because the more metabolically flexible you are, the more you can enjoy things, and you don't have to worry so much. It's interesting, like I've seen, and you've probably seen if you followed some of my masterclasses and my content, that because I'm quite sensitive blood sugar wise, because I have genetically a higher carbohydrate sensitivity, I'm someone that has PCOS, which, by the way, if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, is like a lifelong condition. You can put it into remission, you can improve it, but even post-menopause, the reality is you are somebody who has that syndrome, you are going to have to work harder at your blood sugar. It's not, the misconception is it's just a hormonal thing in your cycling years. It isn't. And so as someone who has that, you've seen, I'll show, if I just have sourdough on its own with some peanut butter, I'm going to see a blood sugar spike, but then it comes back down. Now that demonstrates metabolic flexibility. I would get more of a spike than someone who's less carb sensitive. But then what I can do is, and I was looking at this recently, is this weekend, in fact, what happens when I do that? I've seen my blood sugar go up when I have something like peanut butter on sourdough. Or what happens with my ability to transition to fat burning? The answer is, if I take that reading within an hour or two of having that food, I'm back on the Lumen device burning fat, predominantly fat as fuel. That demonstrates metabolic flexibility. And that's why I say these devices are helpful, because they can show you how you can do that, and they will readjust, and Lumen will actually give you readings to show you how many carbs you can be eating to help you start to develop that. But we really want to do this, and the Sirtuin foods is one way to do it. We've got two types of muscle fibers, type 1, which are used endurance, and type 2, which are fast twitch. When you're fasting increases type 1, but the SIRT1 declines in the type 2. Okay, so fat burning, when you're doing too long a fast, too much endurance, you can start to lose that muscle definition, break down some muscle, and that can adversely affect your metabolism. When you increase that SIRT1 activity through sirtuin enhancing compounds, that can preserve and increase your muscle mass. So you're getting this metabolic boost, you're preserving muscle mass really well, but you're also using and losing body fat. Now, SIRT1 activation in the muscles declines with age. You're less responsive sometimes to exercise, but what I would say here is just be aware that you're more responsive in the early stage of exercise. So if you're someone who hasn't exercised for some time, you actually see pretty good response when you start exercising. Again, go and listen to my podcast with Mike Matthews, all about muscle mass and gain, and how to structure your exercise routine. Because if you have been exercising for some time, you're going to need to continue to progressively overload and to switch things up for that activation. When you activate SIRT1, it improves your bone health as well, which again is very important, because we don't want falls. That is a surefire way to limit your mobility, even for a short period of time, which will degrade muscle mass further. And it's dangerous falling over. SIRT1 also lowers any kind of age-related inflammation, and this is this concept of inflammaging, and it improves mobility. So it also improves insulin sensitivity. So if you're more insulin sensitive, less insulin is going to have to be released to bring your blood sugar back down and put you back into more of that fat burning mode. So then you're not storing this excess sugar as body fat as well. So another thing that's really important, and again, you can use something like Lumen C. When you've got SIRT1 activity at an optimal level, you're also going to be less hungry when you're fasting, and you'll be burning more fat, so you can fast for longer periods without feeling stressed. Again, just exercise caution here. If you're very lean, your body is likely to get a bit more stressed when you're fasting. We don't want to overstress it, particularly women in their cycling years. So you want to find out the optimal fasting duration for you on a daily basis. Pretty much everyone can do 12 hours, but then how much you go beyond between, say, 12 and 16. I would monitor stress levels, how it's affecting your mood, how it's affecting your body composition results. So there's another one called PPA AR gamma, which switches on the genes involved in the synthesis and storage of fat. Some people are more sensitive genetically, so they're going to have more likely to store fat, particularly in response to elevated blood sugar, and also they're having too much fat for them in their diet. SIRT1 halts the activity of this and shuts down that production and storage of fat. It upregulates fat burn. So again, it's another mechanism through how it can help you. And it works along PGC1 alpha, which basically stimulates the creation of new mitochondria. So you get this nice mechanism when you're eating foods that enhance SIRT1 activity, that you're getting less fat storage, particularly if you're sensitive genetically, and you're stimulating more mitochondria, which is giving you more energy. That in turn is going to make you more likely to move as well, which affects your metabolism and your ability to burn fat. Because we know that the more we move, this concept of non-exercise active thermogenesis, the better we're going to be in terms of insulin sensitivity and fat burning. And so you want to be getting up every half an hour or so, moving your body, fidgeting. All of these things really contribute to that calorie and, importantly, fat burn. And when you activate this, it will help your mitochondria to burn fat as a fuel of choice. We've got here white, brown, and I don't know what happened with that slide. Brown fat. We want to basically, and this is where cold exposure can really help, is we want to be beiging this fat really. There's more mitochondria in brown fat, more metabolically active. We can burn fat as fuel. So this is what we want to do, is to convert. And things like cold exposure help with this, but so does SIRT1. So another reason to be eating these compounds. Sirtuin activation protects the muscle cells in the heart and helps the heart function better. It's better for arterial function. It assists in the use of cholesterol. It can protect against atherosclerosis. It enhances insulin sensitivity. It improves signaling in the brain, reduces brain inflammation, enhances your cognition as well. And it also seems to lower the buildup of beta amyloid plaque and tau proteins, which aggregate and are things that have been correlated with Alzheimer's. Not everybody that has these plaques and proteins is going to get Alzheimer's, but there is a correlation. So we want to be lowering that. So they're really, really important, these sirtuins. Also, as we said before, helps with bone health and seems to suppress tumor growth. That's from the blue zone studies. So they contain weak toxins. As I said, it's through this concept of xenohomeostasis. You're getting these weak toxins that are in the plant that are there for the plant's survival mechanism, because plants can't run anywhere, so they have to be able to defend themselves from animals and other invaders. And so they create these compounds, which when we eat them, we benefit from, because it's a mild form of hormetic stress. You'll know that these plants have these high levels of these compounds if they've got loads of polyphenols, if they're vibrant and dark in color. So we're thinking like berries, leafy green vegetables, anything that's got really, really strong pigment suggests that it has a high amount of polyphenols. This mechanism acts like fasting on the body. So if you break a fast and you're having something like matcha green tea, maybe even with a green juice, you're going to be helping with those sirtuin enhancing compounds to really build on that intermittent fasting that you were doing. These are the top ones that contain them. You want to be careful, obviously, with not eating too many things like medjool dates, just because of the sugar content can be quite high. Similarly, resveratrol in red wine, it's actually a lot more bioavailable when you have it as part of red wine than taking resveratrol, but you have to drink a hell of a lot of red wine to get your resveratrol levels up really high, but it is more bioavailable. So again, everything here is going to be in moderation. Dark chocolate, amazing for you, also very high in calories and fat. So you just want to keep it, one nice cube of 90% dark chocolate, really, really great for you, really healthy. But the poison and the benefits, they're always in the dose. So we want to be moderate, just like with exercise, with most things. Cacao is rich in flavonols, helps lower blood pressure and blood flow and control your blood sugar, and helps with cholesterol. It's also been shown to enhance memory performance. So it's a really good excuse to have some chocolate. Turmeric is amazing as well. I like to take this in supplement form. It can help lower inflammation. It works really well in like a joint health supplement in combination as well. It's been used in Ayurvedic medicine for over 4,000 years. and the cancer rates actually in India are much lower. But when you take people out their country and bring them to the US and the UK, they start to get elevated rates of cancer again. You want to combine it with either some fat or black pepper to enhance the absorption of it. Green tea, also amazing. It's been linked with reductions in coronary artery disease, reduced risk of certain types of cancer. It increases the energy that you're burning as well through that SIRT1 activation. You can take it in capsule form as well. And if you look at the Okinawans, which is one of the blue zones, they've got really high intake of green tea and leafy greens and spices. And again, they have a very high number of centenarians, despite being one of the poorest places, interestingly. Resveratrol in red wine is less well absorbed, as I say, in supplement form. You're going to get 6 times the rate of absorption on average from a good quality red wine, right? Obviously, there's a big difference between an organic, biodynamic red wine that's been dry farmed and has had to create more resilience than something that's supermarket bought wine that is, has really lots of water added and irrigation and things. They're not allowed to do that in France, so they're all dry farmed. So actually drinking French wine is a good way of getting more of these compounds. And it has other supportive polyphenols with it as well that really enhance the absorptions. If you then eat it with quercetin containing foods, that enhances the bioavailability. Quercetin, interestingly, is a natural antihistamine as well, so really good for this time of year as we're coming into spring and summer, where people suffer with hay fever. Resveratrol helps to destroy fat cells, and quercetin helps to prevent the formation of new fat cells. So a really good double whammy there. So classically, eating some Mediterranean food that has some onions, for example, that contain quercetin alongside some red wine is a good way. And if you were having something tomato-based sauce with onions and garlic, even better. Add in some rosemary. Now you've got the romaneric acid. And also you've got lycopene from the tomatoes, which is amazing as well and very anti-aging. Dark chocolate, you want to go for 85% plus, ideally. Some of them are treated with the Dutch process. It gives it that darker color. Not all are, so you can check. In America, they do have to say. But Lindt, 90% does not use the Dutch process. Hotel Chocolat doesn't either. But it reduces the flavonols. So here we don't have to say if we've used it, but in the US they do. Mediterranean diet, so olive oil, really, really good. Again, olive oil is fine to cook with. It's very high in antioxidants, so you can be using it for cook with as long as you're not heating it too high. Nuts, berries, leafy green veg, herbs and spices, really, really good for you as well. These are 5 of the key sirtuin activating nutrients. The US diet is about 13 milligrams of these, and Japanese about 5 times higher, and we see them living a long time in Japan. Quercetin rich foods enhance the bioavailability, as I say, of resveratrol, so they complement each other. And then foods rich in apigenin improve the absorption of quercetin and enhances the activity. So the more of these foods you can get, the better. Quercetin also works really well with EGCG. So like you could have green tea, for example, after the meal at lunch. I wouldn't do it in the evening because of the caffeine. That would probably not be a good idea because it can keep you awake. It also works really well with curcumin. So you could even make like a green juice, for example, add some matcha and add some curcumin in, even add a little bit of black pepper or a little bit of fat, blend it up. Really good for you as well. Leucine in protein. Now, if you've done my programs, you'll know that I talk about leucine because we want to trigger muscle protein synthesis, we need to get 30 to 50 grams of protein in any one meal. However, we need about 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine. That's the important essential amino acid to be able to trigger that. And that works synergistically with SIRT foods to enhance their effects. So you could have like really nice salad with some olive oil, with some chicken or fish. Again, it's going to be really, really helping to increase your longevity. Omega-3 fish oils favorably influence the sirtuin genes as well. Omega-3 is amazing. You want to try and get it from whole fish as much as you can. Juicing can be a good way to enhance the absorption of stacks. Just be aware that you're not getting the fiber. So I do prefer smoothies, to be honest, rather than juicing. I'm not a massive juicer myself. Sometimes I might do concentrated shots, like I might make some turmeric or ginger shots and put them in the freezer and then just take them out and have them. Juice either has to be frozen like that or you have to drink it really fresh, because the compounds are going to break down very quickly otherwise. And then I do think because of the fiber, you're better off eating the whole food. You get these compounds released when our gut bacteria start to break down the fiber, which is important. If you are juicing, the reason for going for leafy greens is they have lower levels of these NEPs, so they're more suitable for juicing. And then you can, once you've juiced it, you can add in a bit of matcha green tea as well. If you're one of my Live Younger members, there's a whole like download on this in the membership site with recipes as well that you can find. If you are juicing, the research shows you should be doing it away from food. So I wouldn't juice with your food. You do it on your own. The absorption rate is going to be higher. Just be aware, in someone like me who's again carb sensitive, if you're like that, you could see quite an elevation in blood sugar. So it isn't necessarily for everyone on a really regular basis. It can be a bit of a faff. I know that like the Sichuan, there is a diet called the Sichuan diet. You have to do a lot of juicing for it, and people find it quite difficult because to juice effectively, you don't want any kind of heat. And so you need to use a juicer that kind of cold presses it out quite slowly, and then you've got to drink it straight away. So it can be quite a difficult one. What I would say is I like to encourage people to include as many Sichuan enhancing foods as they can in general. Exercise more, get outside, have protein with nice healthy fats, and you should get your body composition in balance. Just look at the methods of cooking. Don't heat things too high. Microwaving is terrible for destroying nutrients. The sulforaphane in cruciferous vegetables is also really important because it's anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer. So this is really important. When you are chewing things like broccoli, it releases an enzyme called myrosinase, and it's that reaction of that with the glucoraphanin that's contained in the stem, the leaves, and the flowers that produces the sulforaphane. When you cook it, you reduce the myrosinase, but you can add like mustard seed powder back, which will help with that. There's another pathway called NRF2. This controls over 200 genes that are responsible for anti-inflammatory and antioxidant processes. You want to encourage the activation. It gets activated less as we get older. You can see here that if you're having sulforaphane, it's going to activate it more quickly. And broccoli sprouts, interestingly, have way more sulforaphane than just eating cruciferous vegetables. This has been linked, again, stimulating this pathway to lower levels of cholesterol, higher HDL. So you can incorporate broccoli sprouts. You can grow them really easily. Just be careful because they're quite wet that you don't get them moldy. You can buy broccoli sprouts, put them in the freezer and add them to smoothies. Another really good way of getting it in. You also want healthy gut bacteria. Remember I was saying when you've got a really good gut microbiome, you're going to naturally produce more folate as well. And you want to make it as diverse as possible. So eating foods, planting the seeds with foods that are rich in healthy gut bacteria, and then like yogurt and fermented foods, or taking a probiotic, and then eating foods that contain prebiotics, which are going to help that garden that you've planted to grow. So things like resistant starch from green bananas, for example, also flax seeds, really good sources, and fiber-rich foods. We want to have a lot of fiber. So the main reason I'm not a massive fan of a very strict like carnivore keto diet, because I think particularly as women, we want to have a lot of fiber. CoQ10 is also really important. If you're someone that's taking statins, that's been shown to deplete levels of CoQ10. So you do want to have more CoQ10 in that situation. Organ meats are a great source of CoQ10. Also things like sardine, mackerel. So when we look at fish, oily fish that are higher in omega-3, and we use the acronym SMASH, so sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon and herrings, these also seem to contain a lot of CoQ10, which is great. And things like extra virgin olive oil. So, having a nice salad with olive oil, some apple cider vinegar, some sardines for lunch, lots of leafy greens, sprinkle some sesame seeds on top, which is really, really good for your health. Then we have NAD, which is also really important. These are just the last few of the compounds that you can take. So as I say, always go back and look at the first workshop on Rethink Health, put in place that shift protocol, and then start layering these, because these are more advanced biohacking strategies. And if you're not moving and you're not getting really good sleep and you're not eating a good healthy diet, there isn't a massive amount of point to just saying, well, I'm going to supplement with things like NAD, because yes, it's good for you and levels are declining with age, but you want to get the pillars in place first. So taking NAD can be good in the form of, generally, I would say you would take NMN or NR, because NAD itself doesn't have very good bioavailability, but the precursors are NR and NMN, so you can take those. Dr. David Sinclair, a big fan of NMN combined with some resveratrol as well. I take an NMN supplement that has fisetin as well, which is another sirtuin activator from strawberries, combined with resveratrol and also NMN at night, and I'll take that alongside some liposomal glutathione, which is really good for you because these antioxidant pathways are all being regulated when you're asleep. So really important. NR has traditionally been more studied than MNN, but MNN is now gathering popularity after David Sinclair's work. Nicotinamide riboside have been shown to improve blood pressure and aortic stiffness, which is really good, an anti-inflammatory, but hasn't been shown to be effective in improving glucose or insulin sensitivity. Whereas things like the drug metformin have, and also berberine and chromium and bitter melon extract and things like that can help. Particularly if you've had a higher carb food, you could take something like blood sugar breakthrough by Bioptimizers or Keon Lean, that can help to moderate the effects. Petrostilbene is another one that's really interesting. It's really potent. It's contained in blueberries and grapes. Blueberries are amazing. So eating some blueberries, obviously they're a bit higher in sugar in terms of berries, so you don't want to eat loads. Again, grapes very high in sugar. So small amounts of these can be really good for you, and activate your sirtuins as well, and really help to enhance this process of autophagy, which is cellular repair. This may even be more potent than resveratrol. And these are some of the other key antioxidants and polyphenols. So obviously we talked a lot about resveratrol, quercetin and curcumin, glutathione, which you can take in liposomal form, or you can take N-acetylcysteine, which seems to help the body produce glutathione because cysteine is often the limiting factor. Alpha lipoic acid is great for enhancing blood sugar stability, and it's a very powerful antioxidant as well. And also astaxanthin as well can help to prevent oxidative stress. So that's another one that's really good for you. So I'm going to see if there's any questions. We've come to the top of the hour. And I just want to tell you, if you, obviously that concludes the masterclasses that came with the book. There are a couple of ways that you can go and check out ways of working together going forward that I'm running in April. So I'm kicking off my brand new membership, which is the Female Biohacker Collective. You can't yet officially sign up for this because it doesn't start until the middle of April, but you can express an interest, so you can get on the list. There is an amazing founders offer that we have, which you'll find all the details here and everything that the Female Biohacker Collective includes. It's really been my dream to create a space for women to come together and enhance their longevity and really, really start to put in place a lot of the things that we're talking about here. So there's going to be monthly masterclasses with a monthly Q&A. There's also going to be a community of women who also want to do the same, which is great, because I think surrounding yourself with the right group of people is really important. And we're going to be having monthly challenges in there. So actually making it really practical with, like, let's say you want to introduce more plants. How can you do that? There'll be challenges to do things like that, to test things. We'll be sharing, insights that we've got from me and my team in terms of using devices like blood sugar monitors, the Lumen device. It's all going to be there in that membership. So there's a fantastic monthly and yearly offer. It's only going to be available because for like the founding members. So just go and express your interest, because if you just go to that link and click to express your interest, you'll hear from us as soon as that opens in a few weeks' time. So you can get that founder offer. The founder offer gives you lifetime membership at that rate. So unless you leave and come back, it will never change, whereas obviously the price will go up. And what we'll be introducing in the next few months alongside it, which will be incorporated already as part of your founder offer is a biohacking book club, which means that every month we're going to be covering a new book. And it will be mind, body, and spirit optimization. So there'll be different content coming through all the time. And even if you don't want to read the book, you will get the cliff notes from me and my presentation and everything that I know about it. So you can basically effectively get the cliff notes and start incorporating the strategies from that straight away. And as I say, that will be a new book a month as well, because I think reading is such an important part. The other thing is, if you just want to develop metabolic flexibility first, you're looking to spring and you want a discrete program that's going to help you to do that, then I have a mind and body program. It's all about conquering your mind and body. It's 6 weeks. It's short and sharp. It gets amazing results. People lose a lot of weight if they need to on it, and you really, really take charge of your mindset. We talk about all the sirtuins as well in that and how to use them. You get done for you fitness plans and menu plans in this one. And that's my Fearless Fat Loss program. So that's another one, and that kicks off on the 11th of April. So that spaces are going quite fast. So you just need to sign up for that if you want to secure your spot on the 11th of April. So that's the other one you can do. But what I want to do now is you can go and check out those links. You can do both. I have people actually that are signing up for both at the same time because they are different. And so you can be a part of both as well. But as I say, just go and get in early. So I'm going to see if there's any questions. We might have time for 1 or 2 questions. Whoops. If you have any. Does anyone have any questions on this before we make a move? I know everyone's very tight on time with lunch. I think a few people have had to go. I don't see questions today. So I think we will leave it there. I will circulate the recording so I can see some people came in a little bit late. Some people have had to leave during it. So we will circulate the recording and just thank you for coming along. Thank you very much for supporting the book. Really, really happy, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for coming today, basically. It's been amazing to see you. And as I say, we'll circulate the recording afterwards. I hold on one question. Is there a good way to know if you have good or bad butt gobs? Do we strive for good health? You can do. So you can check out your commensal bacteria, Helen. You can test your microbiome. The best test that I've seen for that is the one by Genova, because it does a 3-day stool test. So you don't always excrete evidence of all of the different ones on every day. And so Genova test over 3 days, excuse me, and they also grow on a plate. So the last day is a little bit in depth to do because you have to put it into different packages and then it gets sent away and they kind of grow to see if anything develops, to see if there's evidence of things like candida, for example. But that's the best way, and they show you on a chart whether you've got any kind of inflammation in the gut, what your microbiome looks like compared to a healthy cohort, and whether there are reduced levels in some of the really beneficial bacteria, and whether you need to increase those, and whether also there's any pathogenic bacteria or any kind of parasites. So that is a fantastic test to do. If you want to do that, just reach out to us, either to Vanessa, which is Vanessa at Angela Foster Performance, or info at Angela Foster Performance, and we'll get back to you. You pay the laboratory directly for that, and then you can have a consultation with myself or one of my team. I have a really good nutritional therapist that looks at all those gut reports as well, and does the analysis and really helps you to optimize. You can see then where you might need more support, and obviously the gut is very, very important. So the one that I use, there is another one, a GI map by Great Plains, but generally I use Genova just because of the level of depth that it goes into. I find it to be really helpful, and then you can be a lot more targeted with what you're doing. If you're not symptomatic, I would say really just try to incorporate a good spectrum of fibrous vegetables and nutrient-rich vegetables into your diet. The polyphenol content's important, not just for longevity, but because it feeds the microbiome and feeds the healthy gut bacteria, helps to create more diversity. And then, things like green bananas, for example, you can actually just peel the banana, chop them up, put them in the freezer, and just add a few of them frozen into a smoothie. They work like ice cubes, and then you're helping to feed the gut microbiome. Having a few 2 tablespoons of yogurt on an empty stomach can be a really good way. So if you're not symptomatic, you can just try to optimize things as much as you can. But if you think that there's issues, or you're getting regular kind of bloating or discomfort or inconsistent bowel movements and things like that, then, or you just really, really want to optimize for longevity, which a lot of people do, then with, clients of mine who really do want to optimize everything, we do a whole suite of tests, of functional tests. So we do hormone testing, gut testing, organic acid testing, blood testing, DNA testing, and basically put the whole package together to really optimize. And then there's a small number of markers that we just repeat on an annual basis to make sure that they're on track. And then obviously if they've traveled and they've gone somewhere and they feel like they've picked something up, we might repeat the gut one, but we don't necessarily repeat that one too often. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. I really appreciate seeing you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as I say, we'll circulate the recording for anyone to catch up. But take care and enjoy the rest of your day.